Willow episode 4. I enjoyed this episode a lot more than last week's episode, and I think that's my problem with this show. Is I could see this show being very inconsistent, but I don't know. I still want to watch to the end. That's just the kind of person I am with shows, especially shows based on franchises that I'm invested in. Like there's never gonna make me, there's never gonna be a Star Wars show where I'm just gonna go quitting this shit. I'm done. You know what I mean? Like I love Star Wars. I'm gonna watch it till the end. I love Willow, so I'm gonna watch it till the end. And this episode was good. I think what I liked about it is you have this episode where they're exploring this haunted castle and there's all these different things going on. And what I liked about this episode is a lot of the imagery and tone of this episode felt like 80s fantasy. And I think that's the problem with this show is it hasn't felt like 80s fantasy, if that makes sense. Like a lot of the uh characters and dialogue and things like that have felt very modern, and I've still enjoyed a little bit of that, but there's elements of that are just really distracting, and all that came out last week's episode. But because of the way this episode, like the horror-ish elements, like you see the one dude like kind of looking like zombie-ish, you're like, oh shit, yeah, that's cool because that character, in that imagery, looking like that, that felt like something out of a horror movie when the one blonde girl starts getting lifted up like an exorcism or whatever. That's something you would see in an 80s fantasy that kids would be a little frightened of. And so I enjoy that atmosphere and tone to this show. I just wish the script writing and characters would be a little bit stronger in this show because I mean I enjoyed the characters in this episode. Also, I enjoyed Willow in this episode, but there's moments of this episode that felt very strange. Like when the one guy asked him, Willow, how are you gonna defeat me? The same way we did last time with my friends. I'm like, I don't feel your dynamic because you guys have only been around for 4 episodes together, and it just doesn't feel right to have moments like that. So a lot of the pacing, a lot of the characters just feel weird, and I just don't like that. And I think it's a very flawed mixed bag of a show. I think if you like this movie Willow, you will get enjoyment out of the show, but there's definitely some issues that are really bugging me with this show that felt very weird and not very well thought out or put together. But overall, I still enjoyed this episode, and I think it is just those 80s fantasy vibes that really got me to enjoy this episode, even though it was not great.